Thank you all so much for tuning into this very, very special episode. We are excited to bring to you Tony Vitello's first appearance on More Important Issues. We really hope you guys enjoy this sit down with him as the Tennessee Volunteers prepare for their 2025 season, fresh off the heels of a 2024 national championship. It's great to talk to him, going all the way back to his younger days in St. Louis, Missouri. Talk a little bit about his high school days of playing soccer and baseball. Talk about playing with his or under his dad, and then a little bit about how his coaching career brought him to Knoxville, Tennessee, and the success that it's brought Tennessee baseball. Really, really appreciate you guys tuning in. Please like and subscribe here on YouTube. We've also got follow us on Twitter at more_issues. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, so make sure you follow along there for all of the new content we're bringing you daily, especially as basketball season really ramps up here in SEC play. Thank you all again. Please enjoy this interview with Tony Vitello.
Home run, slam dunks, give him six. Boys at MII, they got your big orange face. All year long is the place to be to hear some balls for life talking Tennessee. You hate us if you want, but we sure ain't worried about you. We got more important issues.
We now welcome onto the show a very special guest. He's a St. Louis native. He is now a two-time SEC champion and your 2024 College World Series champion. Head coach of the Tennessee Volunteers, Tony Vitello. Coach, thank you so much for hopping on tonight. We appreciate it. I know you got a lot of work to do as the season quickly approaches, but we really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's like I've already joked before, but I'll recycle the joke. It's like cramming for a test. It brings back the college memories of drinking Code Red Mountain Dew and some Sour Patch watermelons and trying to stay awake all night so you're ready. But that's what it's like getting ready for Valentine's Day. And it's a chilly night at the park, probably on February 14th, but it could be a good date night for you if you're out there searching for a place to take your lady.
There you go. Yeah. 2024 was kind of the year of Tony Vitello. Caleb mentioned the SEC champs, national champs. You're at the CMAs. You intercepted a Kentucky quarterback on the sidelines there. How do you kind of top that in 2025?
I don't think I can, to be honest with you. I'm mainly because my brain's on the interception, and also, it was nice to catch a basketball at the game, a couple weeks ago. But I had an opportunity and a clean look to take a shot, and I didn't take it, and that's going to haunt me for the rest of my coaching and just really life career. But maybe in 2025 I can get a shot off on the court. So that might be your answer.
If you don't do it, Rick Barnes will yank you if you don't take a shot.
Coach Barnes is such a good guy. I feel like I could do anything around him and he would allow it. Literally one of the best individuals I've ever come across. And yet so intense with those guys, especially in practice, but also in games, and great balance of just, again, a great person, great family man, and yet a true warrior as it relates to his competitiveness. And it bleeds into his guys. And that's why it's been so fun. Since our time here on campus, basketball has been outstanding.
Yeah.
I'm glad Landon mentioned the football, because my mind immediately popped to the basketball play. You may have stepped onto the court a little bit, which I fired everybody up, I think.
They move those seats in. So, I mean, one thing about the administration is Danny White is very ambitious about fan experience. Obviously, part of that is keeping finances in order. And it all trickles down these days, really, just to be frank, to the players. And of course the coaches as well, facilities, but really, players now have something to do with that. So it's important to be organized, and he is. And in doing so, he's moved those seats closer and closer to the floor. Hopefully, Vol fans like to get involved. Hopefully we can go without incident this first year of having those extra close seats that administrations put together.
Yeah, it might lead you to getting a warning from SEC basketball officials, which I think that would make you the first coach to be warned in all three of those major sports there. I think there were some people that were trying to figure out who that guy running through the north end zone was in the Kentucky game. So that would be pretty special. And I think something to keep our eye on for sure.
Yeah, well, we don't. I think our program's drawn enough attention to ourselves, and Commissioner Sankey and I have come across paths. He's very active with every sport, so it's nice knowing him. But I don't think I need a call from him for doing anything like that. And if anything, I take enough grief from some of our players. Dean Curley criticizes my push-ups every single day. From hanging out with the cheerleaders there over at, I believe, the Vanderbilt game it was. But all that stuff's in good fun. And heck, our time in the dugout when we're competing is so stressful. Mm-hmm. I think as a student athlete, these kids need to balance it out. And then also for us as coaches, it's like this past winter, I think we got to do some fun stuff, but there was a work element to all of it. It was really important for everybody to hit the reset button and just get ready for the most important season of our careers, which is the one that's right in front of you.
Sure.
So did the snow, did that kind of lead to the national championship when we played football in the snow on the baseball field? Is that
I had left the facility that day. I think we were going over to Nashville for a high school coaches deal convention. And I saw the video snapshots and I just kind of pretended it did not exist. But, Drew Beam was at the helm quarterback wise. And it kind of spoke to those guys' existence the whole year. Was the snow was an opportunity to have fun. They had fun, but they didn't take it overboard where they were out there forever, or trick passes or trick catches, or guys, drilling each other, trying to knock each other out, tackling them. So it was a cool moment in time for them. It provided some awesome pictures to look at and reflect on, and yet they didn't take it too far. And that was just a parallel for the whole group. The whole season was just very well balanced.
I want to go all back in time a little bit. It's trickled out, I guess, throughout the years. I didn't know this upon your arrival, but your dad is a legendary coach in St. Louis, both in soccer and in baseball. When did you know that your coaching career was starting? When was that evident to you?
There was a banquet, and I wish I could remember what it was. It was a postseason banquet, which in baseball, we don't really get that. We got the parade this year, and then literally by the next morning, people had already started scattering because of summer ball and the draft. It really is kind of unfortunate that we don't get to all hang out postseason. But a normal sport like football, or in this occasion, it was soccer. My dad coaches in the fall in St. Louis, or did coach. I got up there and spoke. I forget why, but I kind of spoke on coaches impacting players, me looking up to my dad, and me, I think I kind of want to coach. And I took off on a tangent like I tend to do with that particular topic. So it was a couple years into college, I started to see that at least as a possibility. And then it became a reality when my eligibility was up, and I still had some work to do with my master's, and Coach Jameson gave me my first opportunity, and I'll be forever in debt to him for that.
Well, I maybe have a different take on that, because I might know when you got your coaching start, when it was finalized. I want to get your take on it. I heard a story today that your dad was playing for the 1997 state championship in St. Louis, and you drove up from Mobile from college. And right before the game, you kicked him out of the locker room and talked to the team, and you gave a speech to the team. And I know those apparently it stayed with it. The contents of that meeting have not left the room, so I'm not asking for details. But that sounds like the day it happened. That sounds like the day it started.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. You've done your homework. I went to a Jesuit high school. So I went to Mobile, Alabama, Spring Hill Junior College, right down the street from South Alabama, and kind of my big brother type personality on the baseball team was named Mitch Ackle. I still am in debt to Mitch forever. And now he's a successful lawyer in Houston, and maybe he'll accept some free tickets when we go to Houston week 3 of this season. Mitch eventually transferred to Rice, stud dude. And so I'm complimenting him to say this. He had a piece of crap truck. And but when you're in college and you got a vehicle, that's your whole world. And he let me borrow his truck just to make the drive all the way from Mobile as a freshman in college. He gave me the keys. I drove all the way up, had that whole 9.5-hour drive to prepare a speech. And I just tried to think, what would I want to hear if I was in these guys' shoes or cleats? and tried to spit it at them. And I think it came out well, and they won. So maybe that was the origin of things. I appreciate you doing that homework.
Yeah, no, when I heard that story, I was like, I want to know when he thinks it was, because it sounds like that was it. And it's also just I didn't know the soccer history till pretty recently, and then we even got a tweet this summer. Taylor Twellman, I think it was right when you guys had made the College World Series.
Yeah,
dropped that you were an excellent soccer player, and
well,
that was in the mix of the U.S. men's national team change. And I was like, listen, I love Tony as a head coach at Tennessee, but I wonder if he'd be interested in taking over for a World Cup run. I don't know. It just got my brain working there. Some revert, some more Ted Lasso vibes, and
yeah,
I thought maybe that was it.
Here's to a new season of Ted Lasso in the works. I think Taylor was being generous. Me and him were buddies back in St. Louis, and he was about, and I say about, as good a baseball player as soccer player, not quite, and was supposed to do both in college. And we were on opposing sides for quite a while, but we got to play on the same team at some point and kind of hit it off. And he's so good at what he does. So the fact he threw that out there was awesome, and it's been fun to follow his career.
I want to kind of stay back in time a little bit, maybe a little bit forward than where we were. But John Curry gives you that first opportunity at Tennessee. They're coming off, I think, 27-25, 7-21 in conference play. It just wasn't what Tennessee baseball could be, because you've seen it with 2005, 1995. Like, those teams were really solid. What was kind of the focus for you to, like, when you take over a program? Is it like, we need recruiting, we need facilities? Like, what is it? What was it to you that, like, this is what we need to focus on to get where we want to be?
I think the biggest thing was to get active and get moving. And they kind of, wiped the slate clean is a harsh way to say it, but we had to hire 7 people. And so Coach Anderson was literally, I had a conversation with him before I met with John Curry, and then eventually had to get Frank over here to look around, because he was also being offered a job at Arizona State. That was a big deal because his son, Brett Anderson, had spring training in Arizona, and they're very close. So we're very fortunate that first hire worked out. And then from there was a domino effect. Q was our final hire as the strength coach. So while it took till October to hire a strength coach, we were working on it every day. And we think we made some dumb decisions. We made some smart ones and some in between, but we were active from the get-go. And one of the things that happened with trying to win right away and getting active was we ended up signing Garrett Crochet, who was supposed to go to a junior college. Instead, he comes and is arguably our best pitcher as a freshman, and now a major league all-star, and just a huge advocate for Tennessee baseball. And, it's so awesome just to see him doing well to begin with. He's a fine individual and comes from a really good family as well. But yeah, it was just to get active. I think word's kind of getting out the more I'm around the community and more there's interaction. I don't know what I'm doing as well as people may think. So things can be scatterbrained and things like that. But the one thing we're never going to stop doing is hustling around here. And I think some hustling paid off right out of the chute with recruiting, with setting the culture in place, and then slowly starting to build a fan and donor base as well.
Yeah, we went to the same high school as Zerk. And so he was like, I think the first maybe week, I think as soon as you got hired, you sent him on the road. He was like, yeah, I was on the road recruiting. Didn't really know what I was doing, but yeah, he was a pretty good baseball player in himself. So
yeah, he was.
Yeah, I think get the moving was the right move there.
Yeah, and I mean, he was a big part of it. And the cool thing about Chad Zerker being on our staff was we're all implants. We all have spent time in the middle of the country, Texas, a little bit west, but never really along the eastern, coast or eastern part of the country, and definitely not Tennessee. And Chad was so good about indoctrinating us on how does it go on this campus? How does it go in Knoxville? How does it go in Tennessee? He played at Memphis. So how does it go? Why is this pocket that's really closer to Mississippi State and other schools down there? Why are those people so loyal to this place? And it truly was an education our first year and a half, if not, 2 years, just on what was going on here. And he helped speed that process up in addition to fulfilling his duties, quite well.
Yeah, and I think Zerk's a great example of that. And then just the staff that you've been able to not only just hire initially right out the gate, but maintain and then even get back this year with Ross Kivett, which his appearance on the show, he was worried we'd get him fired on day one. So we're glad to see that did not take place. That's good. But
hey,
how important has it been to keep that nucleus together?
Yeah, if it's not you guys that get him fired, it'll be somebody else. And of course he'll be involved. But it's fun to have that spark. The one thing that happens after you want to, after you have some success is you don't want to get stagnant. And you certainly don't want to rest on your laurels. And one individual that will never let that happen is Ross, because you're always going to have that spark that he had as a hockey player and as an all Big 12 player, and that he had coaching with us. I think everyone will be cheering him on if he can finish all 9 innings this first game back with us instead of getting the old heave-ho from the umpires. But, I think haste makes waste is a cliche for a reason. And the fact we took our time, it made us, appear lucky to get a guy like Coach Elander and just the whole staff working out the way they did. And then I think it's an everybody thing. It's the people here in Knoxville. It's our staff, the way we work together. We all like being here. And sometimes opportunities come along where Coach Q can't say no to the Cubs offer at the time. Beth Schwartz, our nutritionist, says yes to a big time role at Mississippi, but they both came back. And I think that says a lot. Without having to recruit a kid or recruit a family, if they'll take the time to see, the roster of people we've had and how it's stayed together and those people returning, I think that says a lot.
Absolutely. And I do want to note too, sometimes people get upset after losses, fans, and sometimes I like to fuel the fire, and I hope this happens in the locker room because I know you guys like to cut up. Does anyone remind you that Josh Elander is undefeated as the head coach at Tennessee?
No, but it's kind of a comforting feeling that, he's our associate head coach. If someone's got to do anything, like, Frank is as competitive as it gets, but he's a softie when it comes to his kids. And his daughter's graduation was one game where I don't even know if people knew he wasn't in the dugout because he doesn't want some of the attention he gets. He just wants to do his job. And Coach Elander took over pitch calling duties and did some things with the pitchers that game in particular. And I think we've now accumulated a staff where everybody's very valuable, but also there's some interchangeability there where I literally gathered them all up and said, listen, if you got like a family thing, or it's okay if you miss a couple days, because now with all the resources we have, we can cover it.
Right.
Yeah.
And Coach E could be the infield coach if he had to, even though he's a catcher. And Coach Kivett could coach outfielders, catchers, or infielders. He played about every position and went off to Houston and was running their offense. I could go on and on. To be honest with you, I've even said this out loud. With what we have now, we almost have two SEC quality coaching staffs under one roof. And I hope our players appreciate it. And if anything, I know they're getting the amount of attention that they want, because these kids nowadays are used to one-on-one attention in the batting cage or in the bullpen, and we can't give them that, but they are getting a lot of attention with this staff we've assembled.
Yeah, you said you had it covered. Sorry, Joey.
No, you're good.
If you need somebody to like sit on a bucket with a clipboard and a hoodie, you just let me know. I'll
You're going to have to talk to Greg Vitello, because he's already said that 85 times to me.
Okay.
When he comes to practice, he tries to take over anyway. But hey, I think Coach Serrano did his job he did here was underrated. I think the program was in a big hole, if not a big old ditch, that they had to kind of do some patchwork. And it just never really clicked. And maybe you could even argue they just ran out of time. We inherited a good class that were a bunch of freshmen his final year. But one thing he had going on is not as many managers and other people like that. And one thing we've done is kind of the more the merrier. You just have to be on board with what we're doing. And you can literally be one of the best players in the country or a Team USA guy out of high school. If you're not on board with what we got going on, and that doesn't mean you're a bad person, just you're not all in on what we got going on, then it's not going to work. But if you are, we can have 9 managers. There's no rule against that or whatever it might be. So we'll table that discussion for later.
Sure.
We were talking about staff. I was just curious, Coach, what it's kind of been like having Kirby come back, but on the staff side of things, obviously that's a big switch up. But I was kind of curious your insight and opinion on that.
I think I'm in the fall. We do compete against other teams, and I think I'm over the fact finally that we can't, go to the bullpen. If you can see my arm, pointing to the left-handed arm, he's no longer available to pitch. If I'm not mistaken, we used him like our last 8 games to at least make an appearance. Now, fortunately, there were some off days in there. We try not to abuse our guys, I promise. But it's been incredible to see how he is with the guys because he just played with some of these guys. And I've been that person before. It's very challenging to coach the guys the year before you were in the locker room with, or you were going to Halloween parties with, or whatever, going to class with. And the division or the dividing line he's created is a good one. It's a subtle one. And the guys respect him, obviously, but also I think they're learning from him. And then I think he's learning too. It's a lot of responsibility to be coaching some of the better athletes in the country at that age.
Did he like pick out your hat for the CMAs, or did you already have one?
No, that was to be honest, it was a last minute deal.
Okay.
That was kind of the outfit, I guess, was semi-planned, but I was scrambling around getting ready. There was a lot going on that day and over the course of those 2 days. And I usually got to scramble from practice here to that event. So rather than try and do my hair up and get made fun of for that, I just wore a cowboy hat and probably got made fun of for being a fake cowboy.
Hey, we love it.
Yeah, I think there were more pictures just like shocked that you were sitting down. There were famous people that were shocked that the Tennessee baseball coach, which is a weird word. I know you've talked about how the game of college baseball has grown. There are these celebrities that are like the head coach at Tennessee is sitting next to me. It's like, that's not something you see 10 years ago. Like no one knows who that guy is or whatever college. It's pretty crazy the way it's grown.
Well, it's the game has been put on a massive pedestal. Media coverage is so phenomenal. You throw in podcasts and things like that. It's great. I mean, Division I college sports, you can argue, well, NIL, it's pro sports. Part of that kind of stinks. But part of it that's awesome is it's, a guy like Cooper Flagg is on par with an NBA All-Star. And same thing with Zakai and things like that. So, and now there's more musicians that can just get on TikTok and YouTube and they become famous pretty quick as opposed to having to grind it out like some of the greats of the past did. So, there's a lot more coverage for our sport and a lot more coverage really across the board. So it's just fun when you all get together with folks like that.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned Zakai, and the other night you talked about a table full of warriors, and it was Billy Amick, it was Connor Pavoloni, Cal, Chris Stamos, and Evan Russell. And is that something that, like, when you're recruiting, going out and seeing these places, whether it's JUCO or if it's transfer portal, do you kind of like have something that you're looking for to be like, okay, yeah, that guy's a warrior?
I think you're looking for presence. Try and pay attention to how they interact with their coaches and players, but you can't predict that. I'd throw out some examples. The last few years, there's been some portal guys for us and other people. Anyone who says I knew exactly what was going to happen, there's some falsehood to that. And then in particular, I'm kind of talking about skill stuff, but then when you get into the character stuff, it's hard until you get into the actual trenches with somebody. And that table really stuck out to me. There was no weak spots at that table. And there's also guys that were just really well-rounded. None of them were born on third base, as they say, where they had everything figured out. And they were all willing to do whatever. They were all loved by their teammates. They'll all fight if they have to. They all will compete no matter what the set of circumstances are. It was just a very special table. And it takes a lot of days and special circumstances to kind of earn that kind of what they are. So to predict it in recruiting, in my opinion, is dang near impossible.
Gotcha.
What's the you talked about people buying in, and that's really what you're looking for. Going kind of beyond that, who are the guys, maybe one, maybe a few, who have not only bought in but taken the reins and embodied what you envision your team, your program, and your teams to be? I mean, a few as fans stand out, but I'm curious from your perspective, who's that guy or those guys?
Well, Max Ferguson was here at practice today, and he's in pro ball still with the Red Sox. And Fergie was a guy who sat next to Coach Q every game that he was not playing. He was willing to play whatever position we put him at. And back to sitting around the coaches during the dugout, he just wanted to win, and he wanted to learn the game, and he wanted to figure things out. And a lot of those guys that are problem solvers and willing to do whatever is possible for the team, even if it means a little less, those are the guys that have been really special. And those five at the table were like that. But Fergie was like that. Prior to his time in the Sun was Andre Lipsius. More recent is Xander Sechrist, is a quirky lefty, and maybe you think he's just that, a quirky lefty, and he can get you off balance, and he can throw hard enough to blow it by some guys. There's a lot more to it. The kid overcame a lot of adversity in life. He overcame adversity here. There was a lot of doubters to what he could do, and he just kept pressing forward. But at no point did he draw unnecessary attention to himself, or did he argue with the coaches that his role wasn't good enough for him or whatever it might be. So I think, again, there's more guys I could list off. I wish everybody could get their due attention. But I think it's that combination of they want to do whatever it takes to win, and they're also willing to do whatever's asked of them by the coaches or by their teammates.
I'm glad you mentioned Xander Sechrist. I want to talk about him, friend of the pod. We've had him on numerous times.
Sure, I bet.
I mean, I got him his big league chew deal. I note that was nice. On me. You're not going to see many guys like that now in this era. A guy that, like you said, just stuck it out. He played his role the best of his ability. And when the time came, he took full advantage of it. And I mean, he won Tennessee a College World Series, and that's how it shook out. Is that something you think like that's going to be so far few and far between in any college sports now with the transfer portal and how it exists? What was that like to see that take place over his time at Tennessee? And then do you ever expect, like, are there guys that are that bought in now?
He's pretty unique. He's a pretty unique kid. And again, he overcame circumstances, and you first started recruiting him because he's left-handed. That's the most difficult position, that and catching, to really be a suitor of when it comes to recruiting. So he gets all this attention, and then you get to meet his grandpa, Bob, who was kind of a father figure for him. And Bob is a great dude. He's hysterical. He's very down to earth. But the more you get to be around him and know him during this recruiting process with Xander, it's kind of like, well, if Xander's spending this much time around this guy, and of course his mom, then Xander's got to be a pretty special kid. And that came to, light even more so after he'd committed, just with the messages he'd send and the communication. And then with his time here, he's such a lovable kid, and he's got it doesn't sound right because we're supposed to be baseball tough guys. He's just got a lot of love in his heart. And, to see that back and forth love between him and the fans when we took him out of the game, his last outing at Lindsey Nelson Stadium was what I thought was the epitome. But he went ahead and took it a step further and won a couple games in Omaha, including the last one, to make it even more special. But again, I'll never forget how loud that crowd was, which is why I'm so appreciative of where I work, but also proud that Xander not only put himself in that position to come out of the game like that with a sizable lead, but just the way that it went down for him in particular. It was pretty funny, actually. We wanted to pull him before that. Evansville's the game I'm speaking of. And he went out there and said, with all due respect, I want the opportunity to walk off that mound. And, he knew what he was doing. And
how do you argue with that?
It is, but we got an Omaha trip on the line. So it was a mess in the dugout. So then we send him out there, and he gets the first guy out, I think, on the first pitch, or maybe the second pitch, but it wasn't more than two. And again, it's kind of chaotic in the dugout. I should remember, but it just was like we had a plan. Xander threw it off. What are we doing? We didn't expect to be up by this many runs this late. It was a decent lead. And so we think, all right, well, he probably wants to stay in there. We might as well get another out. But he was ready to come out. So there's all this gesturing back and forth. It was pretty comedic at the time. Fortunately, I don't think the cameras picked up on it because I'd look like an idiot. But I'll be dang if it didn't work out well, and no kid more deserving than him.
Yeah, another kid that kind of like waited their turn is Trey Lipscomb. And you're seeing guys that have come through Tennessee while you're here getting their chance in the bigs. Is that, is that something that's really like, first of all, it might make you seem a little old that like they're getting to that point, but like, is it kind of like a proud dad moment to see those guys kind of get their opportunity?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm not a dad. I can barely look after myself, but I do get to be around these guys and try and steer them in the right direction when it's my turn out of the coaching staff. Um, I don't feel old with Trey. I think I got more energy than he does, but
Okay.
he is a way better baseball player than I ever was, and he's a lot tougher too. Um, there's a lot of people. If you just polled secretly players and coaches and support staff here, who's the guy? Who's in the era of our staff being here? Who is the number one stand out in front? We're the Tennessee Vols, the guy that should have the flag, be the William Wallace of the group and lead us into charge. A lot of people would vote Trey Lipscomb, and for good reason. He was always gifted, great family, great work ethic. We knew he'd have success at some point, but he had to work for it. And he also had to tap into that mentality that was so special for him in that 2022 season when he was our team leader. And I think sometimes that makes you appreciate things more when you got to go through a process as opposed to it just being bam. And no disrespect to other people that have had facilities plop down on their campus and it's like, bam, new facility. That's great. But one thing I like about our baseball stadium here is it's been add this, fix this up, add this, redo this, add this. Now it's getting bigger and bigger. And then some people even are frustrated. They're not going to finish the whole project by this season. That's not a negative to us. It just means that there's going to be more fun days to watch development of our stadium, kind of hopefully in line with the development of our program.
Yeah, it's not a straight shot. And I mean, that as a guy who couple trips to Omaha, didn't, got a couple wins before you won the whole thing, but didn't go the way you wanted it to. And then I think you've even pointed in other times that 2022 season, you don't want to lose obviously in the supers there, but I think you said without that one, you don't win in 2024. What was it? Just the guys being on that team, coaching staff being in that moment, kind of learning from it?
Yeah, just no chance. There's no way it happens. So many of our guys were on that team. Trey Lipscomb was literally a mentor every day. Christian Moore's freshman year. Kavaris Tears learned so much from that group, including Jordan Beck hanging out in right field with them. The ups and downs of that team, what works, what doesn't, and then seeing what it's like to have pressure of winning something or trying to win the SEC tournament, but then being able to lock back in for the regional, maybe seeding you don't agree with, you do agree with. Media talks about number one seeding. Just navigating those waters is a big deal. And so that's why you see some teams like Virginia, we lost to them in college baseball when I was at Arkansas. Their team was unbelievable. They ended up falling short. And in my opinion, the less talented team they had the next year won the national championship. And I think they won because they knew how to navigate those waters a little bit, and they had enough talent to win, which is really kind of all you need. To say we had more than anybody else in the country last year. There's no way to actually win that argument.
Right.
Unless you're wearing orange, then of course you're going to win it. So I just don't think there's any way it happens. And I think right now we're in this little window where the 22 team name is there's a little bit of a lull. I think in about 3 or 4 years, it's going to start to rise again. And kind of like wine, it's going to continue to age in a fine fashion. And then when somebody's smart out there, I get people that email me on the 22 team when I say Netflix special, let me write a book or let me do a podcast. And no disrespect, but that is a multiple episode series that I promise you, if everyone's willing to sign a waiver and put all the information out there, and of course you got some highlights to boot, that is a no doubt watch special. And I'm fine with not being in it either. I'm not saying it to get attention or anything like that. That team, those personalities deserve a lot of credit for stirring things up in Knoxville and also just in college baseball.
Yeah, that was the year we got the legend of Mike Honcho was born.
Yeah, and also the legends here at Lindsey Nelson too, sitting behind the first baseman,
LSU.
and so many other storylines.
Yeah,
some that and some that took place behind the scenes. But if there was an actual special going down, a few of those would come out.
Well, and I got to ask you too. I'm trying to think of all I did. So much happened, but my first thought was Mike Honcho. Then I've got you running. We don't really know where you ran after the Grand Slam. You ran out of camera view, and then you later appeared in the netting, just face in the netting. Does any of this come into your head at any point, or is it all just instant reaction?
Not really. A lot of things I still in my brain. I'm slowly adjusting. I grew up around my dad, and again, you mentioned the speech in the locker room. I asked my dad to leave because of what I was going to say. And then that was it. None of those guys recorded it. None of them tweeted out about it.
Right.
There was no leak or anything like that. It just was us in the locker room. And I'm so used to that environment. So what's happened along the way, and this is me defending myself, but I'm also just telling it like it is. There's been moments along the way where we do something that we typically do at practice or do it on the spot because it's our deal, but there's cameras now everywhere, and it only takes one excerpt or one spin on something to make it seem like a negative.
Right.
I can't do a flip to save my life, but we had this little thing going on in practice the year we went to Omaha in 21. We beat Liberty. The guys wanted me to do something, and I'm more worried about our guys than anybody else. But we made sure Liberty wasn't watching. Scott Jackson was their coach. I'm close friends with him. And there's just some things that go on. Again, Southern Miss, there was a quirky thing that went on. But I think the biggest thing that went on, our kids paid respect to a retiring coach, from their side. So, we like doing some fun stuff. And more times than not, it's just in our inner circle. But when something bleeds out, then it leaves it up to whoever was watching for – whatever their perception of things is what they're going to put on social media.
Sure.
Yeah. And you're kind of like the first guy out of the dugout a lot of times. Have you timed your pop-up time recently to see kind of what that is?
No, but I got to tell you, my body hurts so bad. We're back at it. So I ran in from spring training, and it's cold. It's cold everywhere across the country. It's nice enough we can be out there. So I feel blessed that we can at least practice. But yeah, these guys are wearing me out. They want more ground balls, more BP, and I'd be lying if I didn't say I was a little sore. So it's a slow time, whatever's going on right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get back into shape. We need as quick as it was. I think we can get a quicker review check that you hit last year, late in the year. You did have I can't remember who you were bringing out of the dugout in the College World Series, which it's fun. I'm sure you're just, like you said, you're just being like how you guys are in the locker room and how you are at practice and trying to keep things as relaxed as there's everyone knows how stressful a moment is. No reason you don't need to be so intense because everyone knows, and you do the little finger guns. You see that moment from you. And then it's weird. The Aaron Combs laughing off. I think the guy stole third.
Aaron balked.
Yeah. And normally as a Tennessee fan, I'm like, that's it. It's over. But for some reason, I was like, no, we're going to win this game now. He laughed it off, and I was like, that's it. Is that just kind of how you felt too? You're like, no, he's relaxed. It's another day at the park.
Yeah,
no big deal. He's finishing it.
We mentioned balance on that team, and that was a big part. Aaron, his year before, would go so over the line and getting hyped up. He was a guy who had Pantera or Prodigy or something like that was his walkout song. He likes heavy metal. And so he's always been a little too intense, but last year he learned to balance out that intensity a little bit. And when he laughed, I had the same feeling. Now, if I was sitting at home as a fan, I know how I am watching our other teams. I would have been saying the worst language you could ever imagine. So I can relate to people that were doing that, but for us, it was like, he's got it. Yeah. And he had made that mistake his first year, 3 years prior on our campus in our fall World Series. And he ended up blowing the save, and it wasn't good. And he had grown up, matured, and made the adjustment. And I'm glad he got it done. Kirby came out of that game in the 8th, and you could argue Kirby could have went back out there and maybe finished. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But we used all the information we had, and we went with Combsy. He was our guy the day before that shut down A&M. And hey, all you got to do is win by 1. And that group found a way to do that all year long. And fortunately, that last game, and you celebrate it, you enjoy it. That team will live on forever. But also as an athlete or a coach, maybe not a fan, you got to take a step back and realize how hard this thing is. And it could have went either way several different times during that run.
Can you imagine being like walking up like as a batter and seeing the opposing pitcher in that moment just smiling like the way Aaron Combs was?
Yeah, it was a deal where you knew their rush was going to come.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean, Grahovic, their leadoff guy, had gotten Kirby in Hoover. And by got him, I mean he hit it about 475 feet. So he's leading off the next inning, and we don't have Billy Bean telling us who to put in, but we all talk. And ultimately, Richard Jackson gets credit, our bullpen coach. He talked about how good Combs was spinning the breaking ball down there. And that's, we go to him. Grahovic's the leadoff hitter, and the first breaking ball Aaron threw was terrible. And Grahovic gets a base hit, and it was like, here they come. They're going to make one last push. And the old bend but don't break defense, Reggie White must have been helping us there. It worked.
Yeah, and like you said, kind of taking that step back, and what a special season. But obviously, you guys, I'm sure turned the page pretty quickly. I'm sure guys were back on the road, just shortly after that parade on Gay Street. What's how do you kind of change that mindset from a lot of the guys obviously played on that team, but how do you put it on? Hey, it's a new season, it's a new opportunity to go win more.
Yeah, I mean, it's time. If we hadn't got there already, we had our first pitch banquet. And of course, you would be, it would be an unintelligent move to not mention, Cal Stark is there. He won a character award for us. And of course, when you talk about him, you're going to talk about winning the World Series. You'd be remiss if you didn't do that. But I think our guys, it's been celebrated enough. They've heard it enough. It's been talked about it enough. It's almost one benefit of our fans going too far. I think it's become a subject that's not tired. That'll never get tired, but it is one to retire for the time being and press on to the 2025 season. And the good distraction we have is we don't know who's going to play in the outfield. We don't know who's going to DH. We don't know who's going to play where on the infield. For the most part, we know who. We don't know who is going to complement, our catching situation. We usually use 2 or 3 guys. And then the pitching is a whole big mess. I mean, we lost over 400 innings. We have some talented pitchers, but who goes where, we don't know. And we're already starting to talk about, let's just do this the first weekend, even though we don't know if it's the right answer or not, and see how it goes. And then we're probably going to adjust along the way. So all that is a beneficial, in this case, distraction to what went on last year. And so 2025's got its own problems. So to worry about the good and the bad of 2024 is a waste of energy.
I was going to ask, because you're talking about confidence, just especially with like players last year. But I know you were on SEC Unfiltered last week, and you kind of spoken to the fact that even when you landed like on the plane, you just had a different feeling. There was a different buzz in the air that the players had kind of spoken into existence. I was kind of curious, like what that felt differently last season and kind of how you do carry it in the season. Obviously, different players, different team, but kind of how you learn, obviously, from making it such a difficult feat, like how you can kind of transition that into this season.
Yeah, it was weird landing, and there were other times too, all the way up to the Combs one, but in between where there was these little signs, and maybe you're tricking yourself into positivity because you like the group or you want to win. But for me, some of it wasn't, because I had a really good song on my AirPods or anything like that, and I was hyped up, or it just was. And it became that way because of the leadership we had with our guys. And it sounds easy to take the baton from Blake Burke and do similar, to put your own spin on what he did, but every day is a challenge. Every day is different. We have so many repetitions in our sport, and then you're battling things like the ego and other things that can interfere. But we used the word blueprint earlier. It's there. So it's up to some of our older guys and even younger to follow the blueprint and stay true to it. And then also some of those older guys like Ensley, who he will, but he can't do it alone, to kind of rear the herd into, again, doing more of the right as opposed to getting steered off the wrong path because of some of those other things that I mentioned.
I'm really excited for 2025, Coach. I think what's been most impressive about your teams is even when they've hit lulls or if the season started slow, the last few years, you guys have figured it out. Like, it's never been panic button time, panic mode. So I'm really excited to see, while there's a lot of stuff we don't know, or in a guide, you're still trying to figure out as well. Pretty excited to see what kind of unfolds for this team. My very last question is going to be, I hate to bring up anything kind of maybe controversial, but you were on Bussin' with the Boys last fall. Did they see any of that salary? And if not, are you a little worried about like an FSU dog poop situation going on this season?
Will told me we need to get you back on over in Nashville. And, I have a briefcase, Lamborghini, 275,000. I got IOUs that I can give them for those that watch movies out there. But we've talked, it's up to them to execute payment or to demand execution of payment. But I don't think there's any way of getting around the fact that I'm on the hook for something financially to those guys, which, as long as I can hang around them or listen to some of their smart aleck comments, that's worth the price of admission. So I'll pay. I don't know if I can pay whole salary. We got some bills, that are due.
Stadium.
But, what's that?
You got a new stadium. Like you got a lot. You got a lot going on there.
Yeah, I agree. We need more. I need a Rolodex of excuses to throw at those guys. But
they did just sign a new contract, a big contract. You may have gotten out of it. This might be the right time to.
Yeah, I know. I do fear, though, every time I hear a knock on the door, those two guys are both still pretty physical, and of course, they both played football while I was playing soccer. No disrespect, fellow soccer players out there, but hopefully they don't come calling anytime soon. We need to win some more games, and then maybe they'll agree to a payment plan.
I like that. My last question, I'm not going to ask you to define success. I feel like you've already done that. I will ask you, have you been to Cabo, Ibiza, or Tulum yet?
Yeah, 2 out of the 3.
Okay.
This summer, no fun was had. It was I think Vol fans get, Ibiza's out of season once the summer ends. So 0 for 1 there, but the summer was a little frustrating. Here's my only gripe of Vol fans, probably since I've been here. Other than at football games, they like to question the play calling. Our coaches got it. I mean, yeah. I get it, but just try and stay positive as much as you can. But really, I'd run into fans and it'd be like, I'm on the road to go recruit, or I'm at the airport because I'm going to go recruiting. And it's like, well, you guys don't have to recruit anymore. You just kind of wave the flag and they should all want to come here. And with today's hot button issues in recruiting, I think playing time and maybe something else are what the focus is of a lot of families. So it's still a lot of work. And fortunately now, because of our stadium and other things, we can get our foot in the door with about any player out there, but actually getting them to be on board here and then get them through the draft is a lot. So the summer and the fall were a grind for our whole staff. I'm not complaining. There was a lot of fun stuff mixed in. But again, when the winter came and able to go to some of those destinations and our staff could be with their families, it was a deserved and necessary reset button. And now there's no excuses. We're all here. We're all getting things organized. We're pushing forward in 2025, and we need some leadership to step up. We need some guys to take ownership of some roles that are available, or just make it interesting by stirring the pot and maybe trying to make it rough on someone else to steal in a role, earning a role. But whatever it is, we're going to work hard to at least make it Vol baseball. And, there'll probably be some drama mixed in and some entertainment. But again, to me, Vol baseball is playing hard and playing in a way that Vol fans, win or lose, are proud of the product that's on the field.
Yeah, I think that's all we got. Tony, we really appreciate the time. Looking forward to 2025 season. And let's go wreak some havoc this season. Why not?
Might as well.
We appreciate it. We'd love to get you back on sometime. And I am a soccer guy, so I'm not offended. I could not take either Will Compton or Taylor Lewan. So
Nice.
Not offended, but I would love to. We'd love to get your dad on too. And I know Landon probably doesn't care to talk about soccer, neither does Joey. But I mean, winning 5 state championships in Missouri, 4 state championships is no slouch. Like that's an accomplishment. So would love to talk soccer with him.
Yeah, he would get a kick out of it. And I think really where his biggest wins were high school kids are so impressionable. And some of them resisted it at the age and then came around later to thank him. But there's a lot of successful people out there that often thank him for the values and the principles he instilled in those guys. And along the way, he was able to win some games too. So he'd get a kick out of that. I don't know if he's as entertaining as Xander. He's a lot more normal than Xander, I can promise you that.
How many more games has he been thrown out of than you? Do you know?
A lot more. A lot more. I can tell you that. I hit a bad streak at a young age with maybe as a player at that, and it carried over into some coaching. But he also didn't have the penalties that we have now in college baseball or the repercussions. So, hey, if we go overboard a little bit defending our players, I'm fine with that. But for now, I do think we've got a powerful group of guys in the dugout if we're all present. So we plan on keeping it that way for most, if not all, the year.
Absolutely.
I'll leave it open-ended. That's good.
Yeah, if not, I mean, the porches seem very inviting out there. I really would like to watch at least a few innings out there before my time is done in Knoxville.
Yeah, somebody will be grilling out there. So yeah.
Oh, there's plenty of stuff going on out there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Tony, we appreciate it and good luck the rest of the season.
Okay, thank you guys so much, and thanks for everybody out there supporting us and all athletics.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
You too.